Hey folks, Ray from Rainmaker.com. Today I'm here to give you a quick look at the AIRhub Pro. Now a year ago when I was on the Tour Down Under in 2017, I looked at the AIRhub and I wrote a post on it down there, up there, somewhere up there you'll see about it. The original AIRhub is actually really the Pro model. The Pro model isn't the Pro model. They didn't entirely think through the naming scheme here, but the Pro model came after the original model and it's actually less expensive than the original model but has less features than the I'll explain this in a second. So basically what the AIRhub is a resistance hub for your wheel. And it's kind of like training with a weight vest or something like that, but in the cycling world. It's going to provide essentially additional resistance while you're riding. Now you may wonder why the hell would you ever want to add additional resistance? Well, there's two core scenarios. One is if you're training with friends or a group or someone else who is of lesser abilities than you, then you want to add resistance so you can be with that group while you're riding. The second is you may be training on some sort of terrain like a small bike path or something like that where you can't really go as fast as you want to be able to get the wattage you want and thus the resistance you want for your particular training. So this goes ahead and this resolves that by adding resistance for you. Now with the original AIRhub, which is the front wheel by the way that we're talking about here, you had these kind of four different modes. You had a manual mode, you had a CDA mode, you had a heart rate mode, and you had a power mode. And they were all controlled via your phone. So you use your phone and your handlebars actually came with a quad lock as well as it's a bike mount, as well as a Viva heart rate strap that you could wear that transmitted to Amp Plus to here, and you could control it all dynamically. Pretty cool, slick stuff. Maybe a bit overkill for some folks, which is why they ended up with the Pro mode. The Pro mode is super simple. It's got this little switch right there, toggles 1 or 2. That's it. There's no connectivity via Bluetooth Smart like the original model. There's no connectivity through your phone, all that kind of stuff. It's just that little switch there. The way it works is when you have the 1 selected there, it penalizes you 1 watt per 1 kilometer per hour. So if you were going 10 kilometers an hour, you'd be penalized 10 watts. 20 kilometers an hour, 20 watts. 30 kilometers an hour, 30 watts. Pretty straightforward, right? Whereas in the 2 mode there, option number 2, it's simply 2 watts per 1 kilometer an hour. So if you're going 10 kilometers an hour, you'd be penalized 20 watts. 20 kilometers an hour, 40 watts, and that's actually a fair bit. And you can go all the way up to 100 watts of resistance, additional resistance that it can provide on top of things, which covers the vast majority of scenarios you'd want. The second harder setting there equates to roughly a 1% incline that you're adding to this compared to a flat road per 1 kilometer an hour. So it's a fair bit as you might imagine. So how is it out on the road? Well, I've been riding with it for about a week and a couple days now. And the very first ride I took it, I started off on the road like I normally would, but then I went on to bike paths that are around here that are definitely more pedestrian and kind of slower beach cruiser bike focused. And I switched it into the toggle number 2 setting, and that made me have a legit workout on these bike paths. And I was able to go ahead and throw down a fair bit more wattage than I normally would on a bike path that are twisty and turny and stuff like that. But what was really funny is the next morning I went out riding on a bit of a, well, I didn't start on purpose to start on a group ride, but as I was leaving the neighborhood here, a couple of guys were out riding. I just kind of caught up to them and they're going along and I'm like, wow, we're just kind of starting at the beginning of the ride and I'm like dying. I'm really throwing down a lot of water, just trying to keep up with these guys. And no offense to these guys, they didn't look like they were like pro cyclists. And I'm like, I should be able to keep up with these guys, no problem. And it wasn't until like 2-3 miles later that I realized I had the settings still on for the day before. Once I toggled that off at the next stoplight, then I was back to reality. So it definitely is effective, and it's something that, you know, if you do forget about, then you're going to get one heck of a workout. The company notes that they expect, you know, most people would see the gains from this over time, like any other training thing. I'm obviously not going to see the gains from using this in just a simple week or even a month probably, but a couple months, just like any other sort of training thing. There is no like magic mystery behind this. It's not like this is like, you know, wear a special band and get all fit. This is just reality of adding extra resistance. It's just making you stronger through extra resistance. But I don't think the goal here is really to use it in solo training, though certainly many people do. I think it's to use it again in those 2 core scenarios of you can't because of environmental factors, you know, like paths and stuff like that around you. Those are the best or the safest areas to ride. Or 2, you're training with groups or a friend or a family member who simply can't go as fast as you, allowing you to stay with them while you ride and still make it more of an enjoyable group experience, but being able want to throw down the wattage that you want. So what's the catch? Well, there's only one, and it's the price. So this thing sells for 1,250 Australian dollars or 1,001 American dollars based on today's exchange rate, which is pretty darn pricey. Not as pricey as the higher end version, which sells for basically 1,550 bucks US dollars, though that does come with a quad lock case mount thing, which is roughly like a $60 price there, and it comes with a Viva heart rate strap. That's roughly a $70 price. You're looking at, like, you know, in that $130 to $150 price point, depending on what sales you find for those items by themselves. So realistically, the price of the wheel by itself for the non-pro model, which has the more features and stuff, is like 1,400 bucks. And it does come with the wheel, by the way. They do have a different wheel option as well that costs even more, but this is just sort of the baseline option right there. So that's really tough. And, you know, I talked to them about that, where that price point is and why that is so high. And it's simply a volume game. For them, as a small company based here in Perth, Australia, where I am right now, it's tough for them to make money on this if they were to drop it down to like 500 bucks, because the volumes they're generating right now simply aren't there, which is too bad, because I think if they did get that down to that like $499, $599 price point for the non-fancy wheel, the one I'm using right here, I think that would sell really, really well. But at $1,000, that's a tough pitch for a lot of people. Now, certainly there are pros using it. They have a bunch of pro athletes using it today, and there's no doubt it works well in that realm. But in those cases, they probably have other teams or something like that maybe paying for it, versus you as a consumer athlete, again, a different picture. Still, it works really well. Like, from a technology standpoint, I've got no complaints with it. And having used the fancier model that's not named Pro, but just named Original a year ago, I would actually, even despite all the geek that you see on this channel, I think I'd actually go for the cheaper one. And the reason is it's just simple. Like, I just simply flip the switch from 1 to 2 or down to 0 as it is right this second, and I don't have to think about it. Versus with the phone one, you got to kind of think about that, make sure it's all working right. A lot more flexibility, absolutely, in that model. So if you want that, then go that model. But if you're just looking for like simplicity, this is the one. Anyways, thanks for watching. Go and whack that like button if you found this interesting, or the subscribe button, so you get plenty more cycling and sports technology goodness on the way. I'm just rocking through all sorts of cool stuff now that I'm down here in warm and sunny Australia, and loving the weather here and being able to get out on stuff like this, and just all sorts of cool products on the way. Have a good one.